I still remember that morning clearly. The sun was gentle, not too bright, and the park was quiet except for the laughter of two little children chasing each other near the fountain. I had come there with my cup of tea, hoping for a peaceful start to my day. I liked that park. It was small, surrounded by tall oak trees, and usually empty at that hour. It had become my favorite place to sit and think. The children couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. A little boy and a girl, maybe twins. The girl's hair was tied in 2 messy pigtails, and the boy had his shoelaces untied, tripping over them every few steps. They were laughing, their voices ringing through the morning air, so full of life that I couldn't help but smile. When they saw me sitting there, the girl ran up first. She had a small yellow flower in her hand. "You look lonely," she said, her eyes curious but kind. I laughed softly. "Maybe a little," I told her. "Would you like a flower?" she asked, offering it to me without a second thought. Before I could answer, her brother joined her, a bit shy. "We're not supposed to talk to strangers," he whispered, glancing around. She giggled. "But she looks nice." I took the flower from her hand. "Thank you," I said quietly. "It's beautiful." Their mother hurried over a moment later, a gentle-looking woman with tired eyes and a kind smile. "I'm so sorry," she said, almost embarrassed. "They talk to everyone. It's all right," I replied. "They just made my morning a little brighter." She smiled, thanked me, and led them away. As they walked off, the little girl turned back and waved. "Bye, flower lady," she called out. I waved back, smiling. But as soon as they disappeared behind the trees, my smile faded. I sat there for a long time holding that tiny yellow flower in my hands. I don't know why, but my eyes began to sting. Children always had that effect on me. Not because I was jealous, not anymore, but because once, a long time ago, I had dreamed of hearing laughter like that in my own home. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I could almost hear it. The sound of little feet running down the hallway, a voice calling me, "Mama." But that never happened. 6 years ago, I would have given anything to have children of my own. I prayed, I hoped. I went through every test the doctor suggested, and through it all, I told myself that love, my husband's love, would be enough. But I was wrong. That's how my story began. Not with shouting or betrayal, but with silence. The kind of silence that slowly eats away at a home. Back then, I lived in a beautiful house. A modern 2-story place in a quiet suburb. It had wide windows that filled the rooms with light, and a small garden where roses bloomed every spring. I had planted those roses myself. I used to say they were my children. Delicate, but full of life when cared for. My husband, Samuel, was a quiet man. We had been married for nearly 7 years. In the beginning, he was kind. Not overly romantic, but gentle in his own way. He used to bring me small gifts. A book, a scarf, a pastry from the bakery near his office. I thought our love was the kind that would last a lifetime. And then there was his mother, Mrs. Davis. My mother-in-law, a strong woman, proud and traditional. She moved in with us after her husband passed away. I didn't mind at first. I thought having her around would make the house feel fuller. I tried my best to be a good daughter-in-law, cooking her favorite meals, keeping the house spotless, and listening when she wanted to talk. But over time, the air in that house began to change. It started with small things, little remarks that sounded harmless on the surface but carried a sharp edge underneath. "Still no good news from the doctor?" she would ask at breakfast, stirring her tea. Or, "You know, in my day, women didn't wait so long to start a family." Each comment stung a little, but I brushed it off. I told myself she didn't mean any harm. Samuel would say nothing. He would keep eating, eyes on his phone or the morning paper as if he hadn't heard her, and that silence hurt more than her words. There were days I would cry quietly in the bathroom, careful not to make a sound, I didn't want anyone to know how much it broke me. Still, I held on. I told myself that families had hard times, that love needed patience. I tried to make our house warm, cooking, decorating, keeping everything perfect. Maybe if the home looked happy, the people inside it would feel happy too. But slowly I began to feel invisible. My opinions didn't matter. My presence felt like a burden. Mrs. Davis started taking over small parts of my life, deciding what meals were cooked, how the furniture should be arranged, even how Samuel should spend his weekends. She called it helping, but it felt like she was replacing me. Samuel didn't stop her. He just let it happen. And the worst part? I still loved him. I still believed that if I waited a little longer, things would get better. Then one evening, everything shifted. It was a rainy night in early spring. The three of us sat at the dining table. Mrs. Davis had made dinner. Her cooking always carried the smell of authority. As we ate, she suddenly said, "I ran into Pastor Green today. He asked when he'd be blessing your child. I didn't know what to tell him." I froze. The sound of rain hitting the window was the only thing between her words and the silence that followed. Samuel cleared his throat, still not looking at me. "Mom," he began, but she waved her hand. "No, Samuel. This is real life. People are starting to talk. Maybe it's time we accepted what God has decided." I put my fork down. "What do you mean by that?" I asked quietly. She looked straight at me. "I mean, maybe you're not meant to be a mother. And Samuel, he's still young. He deserves a chance to have a real family." I couldn't breathe for a moment. The words hung in the air like a shadow. Samuel stayed silent. That silence said everything. I excused myself, went upstairs and sat on the edge of our bed. I looked around at the room I had built with so much love. The curtains I had chosen, the pictures of our wedding on the wall. Everything suddenly felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window until the first light of dawn. By morning I knew what I had to do. When Samuel woke up, I told him I was leaving. He didn't argue. He just said quietly, "Maybe it's for the best." I packed my things slowly, folded every piece of clothing neatly, as if preparing a gift. When I reached the door, Mrs. Davis stood there with her arms crossed. "You'll find peace somewhere else," she said. I nodded. "I hope so," I replied, and then I stepped outside. The air was cool, and the world was silent. I didn't look back. I left that house with nothing but a suitcase and the quiet ache of dreams that never came true. I had no idea then that 6 years later, my life would look so different, that a miracle was waiting for me, one that would heal every wound I carried. When I left that house, I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay where I was no longer wanted. I took a bus to a small town 2 hours away. It wasn't far, but it felt like another world. The air was quieter, the people slower, and there were no familiar faces to remind me of what I'd lost. I rented a small one-room apartment above a bakery. The walls were thin, and the smell of fresh bread would drift in every morning. I didn't have much, just a bed, a little table, and 2 chairs. But for the first time in years, it was all mine. My own space, my own peace. The first few weeks were the hardest. I didn't know anyone, and I didn't have a job. My savings were small, barely enough to last a few months. There were nights when I sat by the window watching the lights across the street, wondering if Samuel ever thought about me. But I refused to call him. I refused to beg for a place that didn't want me anymore. One morning I walked to the local library, hoping to find something. Maybe a job posting. Maybe just a reason to get out of bed. The librarian, a kind woman named Mrs. Jenkins, asked if I was new in town. I nodded and she smiled warmly. "We can always use another pair of hands here," she said. That's how it began. I started working at the library part-time. It wasn't much, but I loved the quiet. The smell of old books, the sound of pages turning. I helped children find storybooks, guided older readers to their favorite shelves, and spent long hours organizing things that had been neglected. Sometimes I'd see mothers come in with their children. I'd help them choose books, and the little ones would sit on the floor, laughing at the pictures. It used to hurt at first, like a gentle ache that never truly went away. But over time, that ache softened into something else. Something like peace. I learned to fill my days with small joys. A walk in the park after work. Tea with Mrs. Jenkins, who became my first real friend in years. Letters to an old school friend I'd lost touch with. And in the evenings, I would water the little plants I kept by my window. Small green things that reminded me that life keeps growing, even in tiny places. Months passed, then years. I didn't realize how much I had changed until one afternoon, when Mrs. Jenkins said to me, "You know, you seem lighter now, like a woman who's found her ground again." She was right. I wasn't the same woman who left her husband's house. That woman had lived for others, for their approval, for their acceptance. This version of me lived quietly, but she lived for herself, still. There were moments when memories would visit. Sometimes I'd dream about Samuel. Not the man who let me go, but the one who used to laugh with me, who'd rest his head on my lap after long days. I'd wake up with tears on my cheeks, whispering to the empty room, "I hope you're happy." I didn't hate him, not even his mother. I just wished they had been kinder. After 3 years in that town, I had built a small but steady life. I'd become a full-time library assistant. I rented a slightly larger apartment with a balcony that looked over the park. I bought second-hand furniture, a soft couch, a little table where I could have tea and write in my journal. People in town started recognizing me. I wasn't the woman who was sent away anymore. I was just Miss Davis, the kind lady from the library. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. It was late. I had just locked up the library when a sudden rain began to fall. I stood under the porch, waiting for it to pass, when a voice said softly, "Would you like to share an umbrella?" I turned and saw a man, tall, around my age, maybe a little older. He had gentle eyes and the kind of smile that feels safe. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you," I said. We walked together to the bus stop, sharing the umbrella. His name was Michael. He had moved to town recently, working as a school teacher. We talked about small things. The weather, books, the smell of rain. It felt easy, natural. Like talking to someone I had known for years. That night when I reached home, I found myself smiling. I hadn't done that in a long time. Michael began visiting the library often after that. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. But one day he admitted, "I keep returning the books early, just to see you again." I laughed, a soft, surprised laugh I hadn't heard from myself in years. We became friends, just friends at first. He was patient, kind, never pushing, never prying about my past. He'd tell me stories about his students, and I'd tell him about the people who came to borrow books. There was something healing about his presence. He never tried to fix me. He just made space for me to exist, without fear. Then one morning, as I was setting up the children's corner in the library, I fainted. It wasn't serious, or so I thought. Mrs. Jenkins called Michael, and he drove me to the hospital. They ran a few tests, and that's when I heard words I had stopped believing I'd ever hear. "Mrs. Davis," the doctor said gently, "you're pregnant." I stared at her, unable to speak. "That's not possible," I whispered. "I was told I couldn't have children," she smiled. "Sometimes life surprises us." For a long moment, I just sat there, feeling the world spin. Then tears filled my eyes. Not of sadness, but of disbelief, of wonder. I walked out of that hospital holding my belly, my hands trembling. A life was growing inside me. After all those years of emptiness, after all the prayers that had gone unanswered. That night I sat on my balcony, and looked up at the stars. The same sky that had watched me cry years ago now felt softer, kinder. I whispered, "Thank you." I didn't tell anyone right away, not even Michael. I wanted to hold the news close to my heart, like something sacred. But eventually I told him. His face lit up with pure joy. "That's wonderful," he said. "You're going to be an amazing mother." I didn't know what our future would be, or whether we'd end up together, but in that moment, I felt complete. It wasn't just about the baby. It was about life reminding me that endings can become beginnings, that even the most broken heart can bloom again. And as the months passed, I prepared quietly, reading baby books, sewing tiny clothes, humming to the little heartbeat inside me. Sometimes I'd still think of Samuel and his mother. I didn't hate them anymore. I just hoped they found peace too, because I had found mine. The months that followed were the gentlest of my life. My pregnancy was peaceful, like a song I could finally hum without fear. Every morning I would stand by the balcony with a hand on my growing belly, whispering to the 2 tiny lives within me. I didn't know then that there were 2 of them. Not yet. I only knew that something beautiful was unfolding inside me. Mrs. Jenkins became my guardian angel through it all. She made sure I never walked to work alone, brought me homemade soup, and told me stories about her own children. "Motherhood," she said once, "isn't about how it begins, but how much love you give when it does." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. Michael stayed close too. He never pushed or tried to define what we were. He just helped, carrying my groceries, fixing a shelf, walking me home after work. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with a quiet warmth that said more than words ever could. By the time I reached 7 months, the doctor smiled after my checkup. "Well," she said, "you might want to start thinking of 2 names instead of 1. "2?" I asked, not sure if I'd heard right. She laughed softly. "Twins. A double blessing." I don't remember how long I sat there, my hands pressed against my belly, tears streaming down my cheeks. For years I had begged heaven for 1 child, and now I was being given 2. When I told Michael, his eyes widened, and then he laughed, a warm, unrestrained laugh. "2 little miracles," he said. "They must already know how strong their mother is." That night I wrote in my journal, God didn't forget me. He was just taking his time. The months passed in gentle rhythm. My world became smaller but fuller. Just me, the library, my small apartment, and the heartbeat of 2 lives growing within me. The townspeople watched over me like family. Every morning someone would leave fresh fruit or milk outside my door. One of the children I read to at the library gave me a drawing, me sitting with a big belly, and 2 smiling babies in my arms. I framed it on my bedside table. When the time came, the sky was pale and calm. There was no storm, no rush, just quiet light. I gave birth to a boy and a girl. I named them Grace and Daniel. Grace for the mercy that found me when I was lost. Daniel for strength and courage, the kind I had to find alone. Holding them for the first time felt like touching the edge of heaven, their tiny fingers wrapped around mine. And I thought, this is what love was meant to feel like. The hospital room was silent except for their soft breathing. I whispered to them, "You're my reason. You're my second chance." The first few months were exhausting, of course. 2 babies meant double the crying, double the feeding, double the sleepless nights. But I didn't mind. Every tear, every yawn felt sacred. I had waited years for this chaos. Michael came often, bringing diapers, food, and laughter. He read bedtime stories to the twins, his deep voice soothing even me. One evening I thanked him quietly. "You've done so much for us." He smiled. "You've done more. You've built a whole new life out of broken pieces." As the twins grew, so did I. I learned patience. Real patience. Not the kind that waits for others to change, but the kind that forgives the past and focuses on what's here. Now, I learned joy in small things. The first time Grace laughed, the way Daniel clapped when he heard music, the sound of their tiny feet on the wooden floor. And slowly, the ache of my old life faded. 3 years passed. By then I had become head librarian. The library was more alive than ever, filled with children's laughter, community gatherings, and new books. My twins often played in the children's section, their drawings taped proudly to the wall. I was no longer the woman who had been left. I was the mother of Grace and Daniel, the woman who brought warmth to the library and kindness to every visitor. Then one afternoon, everything began to shift again. A woman came into the library, elegant, well-dressed, with a polished smile. She looked around before walking up to the counter. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Mrs. Davis?" I froze. It had been years since anyone called me that. "Yes," I said cautiously. She smiled faintly. "I thought so. I used to live near your old home. You might not remember me. Lydia Parker. I attended church with your mother-in-law." I felt a small tightening in my chest. "Oh," I said softly. "How is everyone there?" She hesitated, her eyes studying me. The neat blouse, the calm smile, the little photo of my twins on the desk. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose they're all right. Though, I must admit, you're quite the topic these days." I blinked. "Topic?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Word got around that you have children now. Twins, I heard." I nodded slowly. "Yes, Grace and Daniel." She smiled, though it looked more like surprise than joy. "Your mother-in-law nearly fainted when she heard. She didn't believe it at first. And your husband, well, I guess ex-husband now. He's been quiet lately. People are talking, you know. The ones who used to pity you now say how life turned around in your favor." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled gently. "Life has a way of surprising us," I said. She nodded, studying me for a moment longer. "You seem happy." "I am," I said simply. After she left, I sat for a long time in silence. I hadn't thought about them in years. But now, memories came rushing back. The rain that night I left, the silence at the dinner table, my suitcase by the door. Only now, the pain was gone. Weeks later, Mrs. Jenkins told me a small article had been printed in the county paper. It was about our library's community reading program. There was a picture. Me holding Grace and Daniel, surrounded by children. I didn't think much of it, but somewhere miles away, that picture found its way into the hands of Samuel and his mother. For them, life hadn't been as kind. Samuel had remarried a few years after I left, but people said it didn't last. His second wife left him after 2 years. His mother's health had begun to decline. Their house, the one I once filled with warmth, had grown cold and quiet. When he saw that newspaper photo, I imagine his hands trembling, my smile, my children, the life he once thought I'd never have. Mrs. Davis, his mother, refused to believe it at first. "It can't be true," she must have said. "It's probably someone else." But deep down she knew. The same neighbors who once whispered about my barrenness now whispered about their downfall. People began avoiding them at church, no longer looking up to Mrs. Davis as before. Some pitied her. Others called it karma. For the first time in her life, she felt what it was like to be the subject of quiet judgment. And Samuel, he carried his guilt in silence. I didn't know any of this then. I was too busy living, raising my twins, working, laughing again. But sometimes I would feel a strange peace, as if the universe itself had balanced things out. One spring morning, I was helping Grace and Daniel pack for their first day at preschool. Grace kept asking questions about everything. Her shoes, her lunchbox, her ribbons. Daniel was quieter, holding my hand tightly as if afraid of the new world waiting for him. When I walked them to the school gate, I realized how full my life had become. All the years of loneliness had bloomed into this moment. 2 little hands waving at me, 2 voices shouting, "Bye, Mama." I walked back home with tears in my eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were the kind that cleanse you, the kind that whisper, "You made it." Later that week, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Samuel's, it was short, just a few lines. I saw the photo. "You look happy. I'm glad life gave you what I couldn't. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I never forgot you. Please take care of yourself and the children. Samuel." I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my journal, between pages that spoke of new beginnings. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "I forgive you," because I truly did. Years later, I would sometimes walk past families at the park. Mothers chasing their toddlers, fathers lifting their children high into the air. I'd smile, remembering how I once sat on that same park bench, empty-handed, watching other people's joy. Now, when I looked down, Grace and Daniel would be running around, laughing just like those children did years ago. And sometimes, other women would come to me. Women who had been told they were less, that their worth depended on someone else's approval. I'd tell them my story, not as a tragedy, but as proof that time can be kind. I never saw Samuel or his mother again. But I didn't need to. The lesson had already been written into our lives. They learned that cruelty has a way of echoing back. And I learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom. My revenge was never loud or bitter. It was in the laughter of my twins, the peace of my home, the love that filled my heart when I tucked them into bed each night. I didn't win by proving them wrong. I won by becoming whole again. And that, I realized, was the quietest, most powerful victory of all. It was a Saturday morning in late spring, the kind of day that made everything feel lighter. The air smelled of lilacs from the garden behind our house, and the twins were already up, running barefoot through the grass with the unshakable joy of children who have never known fear. I watched them from the porch, a mug of tea warming my hands. Grace and Gabriel, my miracles. I still whispered their names sometimes, just to remind myself they were real. They were 4 now, with curls that bounced when they ran, and laughter that filled every corner of our home. Some mornings I still woke up half expecting it all to be a dream. That somehow I would open my eyes and be back in that cold house, waiting for a husband who never came home with kindness. But no, those days were gone. These days, peace was my constant companion. Not the loud, triumphant kind. Just quiet contentment that lived in small things. The smell of pancakes, the sound of crayons on paper, the hum of the washing machine. I had built this life slowly, like a garden planted seed by seed. And though I rarely said it aloud, I was proud of myself. The library where I worked had become more than a job. It was a place where I belonged, where people greeted me with warmth, where children called me Miss Ella, and where the twins had learned to whisper stories into each other's ears between the aisles of picture books. That day, we were preparing for the library's annual Family Reading Fair. I had helped plan it for months. A day of laughter, books, and community. The twins were excited because they were going to help hand out bookmarks with their drawings on them. I didn't know that this day, so ordinary, so joyful, would bring back ghosts I thought I had buried forever. The fair was already lively by the time we arrived. Balloons floated above the tables, and music played softly from a speaker near the entrance. Children ran past holding cotton candy. Parents chatted in small groups. I was arranging books on a display table when Grace tugged at my skirt. "Mommy," she whispered, "someone's looking at us." I glanced up, smiling automatically. But the smile froze before it reached my eyes. Across the crowd, standing near the entrance, were 2 figures I hadn't seen in 6 years. Samuel, and beside him, his mother. My breath caught, but I didn't move. They looked almost exactly as I remembered them, and yet time had left its quiet marks. Samuel's hair was touched with gray at the temples. His mother leaned slightly on a cane, her back not as straight as it once was. They both stood still, staring. For a long moment, it felt like the whole fair faded around us. Like the chatter and laughter had dropped into silence. All I could hear was my heartbeat. Samuel's expression was hard to read, something between disbelief and regret. His mother looked pale, her mouth trembling, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. I blinked once, grounding myself. Then I looked down at Grace and Gabriel, my anchors, and smiled softly. "It's all right, darling," I said. "Let's finish setting up, okay?" They nodded, their small hands busy again with their crayons, unaware of the storm standing at the edge of the crowd. A few minutes later, I felt someone approach behind me. I knew that familiar rhythm of footsteps before I even turned around. "Ella," he said quietly. It was strange hearing my name from him again. The voice was the same, but the weight behind it had changed. Heavier, slower. I turned, keeping my posture calm. "Hello, Samuel." He looked older, not just physically. There was something tired in his eyes, a heaviness that didn't come from years but from choices. "I didn't know you were here," he said awkwardly, glancing around the table. "I've been here for a while," I answered. My voice surprised even me. It was steady, gentle. His mother stood a few steps behind him, holding her purse with both hands. When our eyes met, she looked down, ashamed. I didn't rescue her from the silence. I had spent too many years filling silence for them. After a moment, Samuel said softly, I heard you had children." I nodded, my eyes soft but unreadable. "Yes, twins," he swallowed, his throat moving like it hurt to speak. "They're beautiful." "Thank you," I said simply. His eyes lingered on them. Grace crouched over a drawing, Gabriel holding up a paper airplane to show another child. Their laughter drifted toward us, pure and bright. Then his mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. "They look happy?" "They are," I replied. She nodded weakly, blinking fast. "You always wanted that," she murmured. "A family." Her voice broke, and she pressed her lips together, holding back tears. For a moment I saw not the woman who had once told me I wasn't good enough to be a mother, but an old woman haunted by her own cruelty. But I didn't feel anger, just distance, like looking at something that had happened in another lifetime. Samuel shifted, trying to find words. "I shouldn't have let things happen the way they did," he said quietly. "I thought I was doing what was right for my mother, for the family, but I hurt you." I said nothing. The words didn't need my answer. They were his burden to carry. "I lost everything after you left," he continued. "The house never felt like a home again. I remarried, but it didn't last. I guess." He trailed off, then forced a weak smile. "I guess you can't build peace on guilt." For a long while, none of us spoke. Children laughed somewhere nearby. The wind rustled through the banners. Then Grace ran up to me, her little hands sticky with paint. "Mommy, look what I made," she said, holding up a bright picture of a sun and two smiling stick figures holding hands. I crouched down, smiling. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." She looked up at Samuel and his mother, curious. "Who are they?" Samuel's lips parted, but no sound came out. I touched her hair gently. "Just some people Mommy used to know." She nodded, satisfied, and ran off again toward her brother. Samuel's mother was crying silently now, her shoulders shaking. "She called you Mommy," she whispered. "You really are one." I looked at her, my voice calm. "I always was. You just couldn't see it." That broke her completely. She reached for my hand, but I took a small step back. Not out of cruelty, just self-preservation. Some wounds shouldn't be reopened when they've finally healed. We talked a little longer, about nothing and everything, about time passing, about people changing. Samuel said he was living alone now, that he often thought of what could have been. I listened, not with bitterness, but with understanding. When it was time to go, I looked at both of them, this man and his mother who had once broken me, and realized something quietly profound. I had forgiven them long before they ever came to ask. Forgiveness wasn't about them, it was about me, about letting my soul breathe again after years of holding my breath. So I smiled gently and said, "I hope you both find peace." Then I turned and walked away, calling for my children. Grace and Gabriel came running, their laughter bright and unburdened. They each took one of my hands, and together we walked toward the sunlight. Behind me, I didn't have to look to know they were watching. Not with anger, but with a kind of hollow awe, because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't shouting or proving a point. It's living the life they said you never could. That night, after the twins were asleep, I sat by the window. The moonlight spilled softly across their small beds, their breaths steady and warm. I thought of Samuel and his mother, their faces when they saw the children, the way their pride had melted into silence, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel pain when I remembered them. Only peace. I realized that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means looking at the wound and seeing how beautifully it's closed. Maybe one day they would find their own peace, too. But for me, I already had mine. After that day at the fair, something inside me shifted. Not suddenly, but quietly. Like a door that had been stuck for years finally creaking open. Seeing Samuel and his mother again didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It was strange. I had imagined that if I ever saw them again, I'd feel anger, or bitterness, or maybe the urge to ask why. But instead I felt nothing sharp. Just a deep, gentle understanding that everything that was meant to fall away had already done so. The past was behind me, and I was finally walking without its shadow. The next few weeks moved softly. The twins kept talking about the fair, how many friends they'd made, how much cotton candy they'd eaten, how proud they were that people liked their drawings. Every time they laughed, the sound felt like sunlight in a room that had once been locked. At night, when they were asleep, I'd sit by my window with a cup of tea and think about the strange ways life unfolds. I had spent so many years believing that motherhood was a door closed to me forever. Now it was my whole world, and not just as a mother to Grace and Gabriel, but as a woman who had learned to nurture herself too. I stopped hiding from joy. I stopped apologizing for surviving, and the more I opened my heart to peace, the more peace found its way to me. One afternoon, as I was shelving books at the library, our director, a kind woman named Mrs. Turner, came to me with a bright smile. "Ella," she said, "I have something to tell you." I turned, curious. "What is it?" She handed me a piece of paper, a flyer. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Community Service Award Nomination, recognizing women who uplift others." I blinked, surprised. "You nominated me?" Mrs. Turner laughed softly. "Of course I did. You've done more for this town than you realize. The reading program you started for single mothers? The after-school group for the little ones? You've built something real here." My throat tightened. I looked at the paper again. My name written neatly under the word, nominee. For a moment, all I could do was smile through the sting in my eyes. "I didn't do any of it alone," I whispered. "No one ever does," she said gently. "But someone has to light the first candle." The weeks leading up to the awards ceremony were filled with small, quiet moments that reminded me how far I had come. Every time I walked through the library doors, I saw faces that once were strangers but now felt like family. Children waving, mothers smiling, neighbors stopping by just to say hello. Even the walls seemed to hold stories now. The twins would sit in the reading corner after school, listening to me read aloud to the other kids. Sometimes Grace would whisper, "Mommy, they like your voice." I'd smile and say, "I hope it makes them feel safe." Because that's all I ever wanted. For children to grow up feeling safe, seen, and loved. Maybe that was why life had chosen this path for me. Not to give me what I wanted right away, but to teach me how to become what I once needed. The day of the ceremony came on a crisp autumn evening. The town hall was full, not with grand decorations, but with warmth, soft lights, rows of chairs, the smell of fresh flowers from the local florist. I sat near the back with the twins on either side of me, both dressed neatly, Gabriel in a tiny bow tie, Grace with ribbons in her hair. When my name was announced, I froze for a moment. The applause rose gently like a wave. I looked around, familiar faces smiling, nodding, clapping. And then, something unexpected happened. Near the doorway, partly hidden in the crowd, I saw two familiar figures standing quietly. Samuel and his mother. I hadn't invited them, but somehow they were there, watching. For a split second, my heart trembled. Then it steadied. I rose from my seat, holding Grace's small hand, and walked toward the stage. The host smiled warmly as she handed me the small plaque. "Ella Johnson," she said, "for her compassion, her dedication to education, and her work uplifting women and children in our community." The audience clapped again. I felt my breath shake a little as I took the microphone. "I don't know how to describe this feeling," I began softly. 6 years ago, I thought my story was over. I thought life had decided I wasn't meant for love or family or purpose. But what I didn't realize was that sometimes when one life ends, another quietly begins. I glanced toward the back of the room. Samuel's mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Samuel stood still, his expression unreadable. "I learned," I continued, "that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes later. Sometimes it grows in places that once felt barren. And when it does, it teaches us how to forgive, how to stand tall again, and how to build beauty out of brokenness." There was a pause, a hush that felt sacred. "I accept this not just for myself," I said softly, "but for every woman who was told she wasn't enough, for everyone who was made to feel small. You are more than their words. You are the life that grows back." The applause that followed was warm and kind, not thunderous. Just right. I smiled, thanked them, and walked off the stage. Grace and Gabriel ran into my arms, and in that embrace, I felt the full circle close. After the ceremony, as people congratulated me, I noticed Samuel and his mother standing by the exit, hesitant. For a moment, our eyes met again. There was no tension now. Just a quiet acknowledgement. His mother mouthed the words, "Thank you." Samuel gave a small nod. Not of entitlement, but of peace. And that was enough. I didn't go to them, and they didn't come to me. Some things don't need to be spoken when hearts finally understand. That night when we got home, the twins were sleepy but giddy. "Mommy, you got an award," Grace said as I tucked her in. "Does that mean you're famous now?" I laughed softly, smoothing her curls. "No, sweetheart. It just means I worked hard and people noticed." "Like when we helped clean the garden?" Gabriel asked. "Exactly." I smiled. "When you do good things, even small ones, they grow. Just like our flowers." They both smiled sleepily. "Good night, Mommy." "Good night, my loves." I sat beside them for a while, listening to their even breathing, thinking of all the nights I once cried for children I thought I'd never have. Now, here they were. Two living reminders that faith in its quiet way always delivers. In the months that followed, life carried on. The award didn't change me, but it did open doors. More mothers came to the library for help. More children joined the reading programs. Even the mayor invited me to speak at a school event about resilience. At first, I was nervous. I didn't like public speaking, but when I stood before that room of young girls, I saw something in their faces. The same uncertainty I once felt. So I told them my story, not every detail, but enough to let them know that even after rejection, even after loss, there is life. And when I finished, they clapped. Some cried. One girl hugged me and whispered, "I want to be like you." I smiled and whispered back, "Be even stronger." Sometimes I still saw Samuel and his mother around town. At the grocery store, the post office, the church bazaar. We didn't talk much, but there was a quiet respect now. No resentment, no shame. Just people who had finally laid the past to rest. Once, Samuel's mother stopped me outside the florist's shop. She looked frail, her voice gentle. "I'm proud of you, Ella," she said softly. "You became everything I once feared you couldn't." I smiled, truly meaning it when I replied, "I became what I was meant to be." She nodded, eyes glistening, and walked away slowly, leaning on her cane. I watched her go, feeling no bitterness, only gratitude that life had allowed us both to grow differently. Now, when I walk through the library and see mothers reading to their children, I sometimes think of my younger self, the woman who cried in silence, praying for something she couldn't understand. I wish I could tell her what I know now, that no loss is wasted, that no rejection defines you forever, that even the deepest pain can become soil for something beautiful to bloom. Grace and Gabriel are 5 now. They love stories, fairy tales, heroes, adventures. But sometimes when we sit together at night, they ask me to tell them a story of my own. So I tell them about a woman who was told she couldn't be a mother, and how life surprised her anyway. They always listen wide-eyed, their little hands resting in mine. And when I finish, they whisper, "That woman sounds like you, Mommy." I smile. Maybe she does. Then I kiss their foreheads and whisper the same words I whisper every night. To them, to myself, to the woman I used to be. You are loved. You are enough. And you are home. The sun had just begun to soften when I stepped into the garden. The day was neither loud nor quiet, just breathing. Like the earth itself was exhaling after a long sigh. My twins were playing near the old fence, their laughter light and distant, blending with the sound of rustling leaves. I had planted everything in this little space with my own hands. The roses, the basil, the small lemon tree that now bent under its own green promise. There was peace here, a kind I had once begged life for. Now it simply lived beside me. I knelt down, my knees pressing gently into the soil. The smell of the earth rose up warm and familiar, like something that knew all my secrets, but chose to keep them safe. In my hands, I held a small sapling, a delicate jacaranda, its roots wrapped in soft brown burlap. I had chosen this tree for a reason. Jacarandas bloom in violet, a color of transformation, they say, and I like that idea. Not rebirth in grand fireworks, but quiet, steady change, the kind that takes years and patience. The twins ran over, curious. "Mommy, are you planting another tree?" my daughter asked, her curls catching the light. "Yes," I smiled, brushing dirt off my palms. "One that will grow tall and strong, maybe even taller than you two." My son laughed. "Nothing's taller than me." "Oh, we'll see," I teased softly. "Nature always surprises us." They knelt beside me, helping as I dug a small hole. Their tiny fingers, messy with soil, reminded me of the first day I'd held them. 2 fragile little miracles I never thought would exist. As we worked, I thought of all the years I'd lived believing my story had ended when I was cast out. I remembered the quiet ache in that empty house, the loneliness that followed me through nights like shadows. And then, I remembered how the light began to return, slowly, through kindness from strangers, through work that gave me purpose, through laughter that started in small moments and grew into my children's voices. Every ending had carried a seed. I just hadn't seen it then. When the sapling was upright and steady, I pressed the soil around its roots, firm but gentle. The twins patted the dirt beside me. "There," I said softly. "Now we wait." "For flowers?" my son asked. "For time," I said. "And everything it brings," signed back on my heels, brushing the dirt from my hands and looked up at the open sky. The same sky that had watched me cry, watched me walk away, watched me rebuild. It looked endless now, like it had forgiven me forever thinking I wasn't enough. Sometimes I still thought of them, Samuel and his mother, not with bitterness but with understanding. Life had its own way of teaching people lessons, some through pain, some through love, and some through the quiet realization that they'd lost something they could never reclaim. When they'd seen me last, I'd seen their faces change, not out of envy but out of recognition. They saw what they had thrown away, not a woman who couldn't give them a child, but a woman who had grown into a mother, strong and whole on her own. I hoped they found peace too, because carrying pain forever, well, that's another kind of exile, and I'd had enough of that to last a lifetime. The twins had gone back to chasing butterflies now, their laughter echoing softly against the garden walls. I stayed there just watching them. I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who waited at windows, who prayed through tears, who measured her worth through someone else's eyes. She had planted this life without knowing it. Every act of endurance, every choice to get up again, had been a seed, and now I could finally rest in what had grown. I reached for the small watering can beside me, the one with faded paint and a dent on its side. It was old, but it still worked, just like me. I poured water over the base of the sapling, letting it soak in slow and deep. The soil darkened, the roots drank, and I smiled. "You'll be strong," I whispered to the little tree, "even when the wind comes." A breeze passed just then, soft and cool, brushing my hair back as though in answer. The jacaranda's tiny leaves trembled, catching bits of golden light, and for a brief, beautiful second, the air smelled of rain and new beginnings. I sat there longer than I meant to, hands in the dirt, heart wide open. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something or someone. I was simply here. Behind me, I heard the twins calling, "Mommy, come look, the butterflies are landing on our flowers." I turned, my heart full, my eyes warm with tears I didn't hide this time. "I'm coming," I said, and my voice felt light again. As I stood, I glanced once more at the sapling, its thin stem swaying gently. It looked so fragile, yet I knew one day it would bloom. The kind of bloom that covered the world in violet. The kind that whispered, "Everything lost can grow again, if you give it love." I walked toward my children, my steps soft over the grass. Their laughter met me halfway, pure and bright, and as the evening sun spilled across our little garden, I realized something simple, something I wished I had known all along, that peace doesn't come when life gives you what you want. It comes when you learn to bloom where you are planted, and sometimes when you plant something new. The story we have told is fictional, but is based on some real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. We're not sharing this to pass judgment, but in the hope that someone listens and pauses to think. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I'm so curious. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses.